guys, welcome back to At the Table. Today we are talking about chili, and chili is one of those things, soups and chilies, when it starts to get cool, we just begin to crave those warm meals in our kitchen. So I have two different types of chili for us to start on today. They're both a little bit different. So I decided to go more of just a spin on your average chili rather than kind of our basic chili that we tend to make. These are both, one is a white bean chili and then with chicken, and then the other one is a butternut squash and black bean chili, which I have had that recipe for years and it's been one of my favorites. I don't even know where I got it from. It's just been so good. So we're gonna start with that white chicken chili. And what we're gonna do first is go ahead and get our Instant Pot. We're doing both of these in an Instant Pot just for times purposes today, but you could absolutely do these on a stove. I typically do the butternut and black bean squash chili in my crock pot. So you could do either one in a crock pot or on your stove top if you wanna go that route. So we're gonna go ahead and get our Instant Pot warm just to start sauteing a little bit. So we are just gonna turn it on saute. I'll pump up the time just a little bit and that'll start heating up. So what we're gonna add first is our garlic. And I'm just gonna chop these up. We have 3 little cloves of garlic here. And that's our Instant Pot letting us know it is on. And I love fresh garlic. I feel like it gives food such good flavor. You do have to be careful if you're using something like an Instant Pot though, because all of the flavors kind of meld in there. They do not release. It is locked into the Instant Pot, so you just have all of those flavors that intensify even more than your average crock pot or just stovetop pot. So just be mindful of that when you're doing any types of broths or, really strong flavors like garlic here. Those can really intensify. So you might want to scale back on those unless you're like me and you just love garlic, so you don't mind if it's a little bit stronger than normal. All right, so I actually need to put a little bit of oil in our Instant Pot here. And we just want enough to kind of coat the bottom of that pan. And then I'm gonna add our garlic. And that will help to flavor our oil, kind of bring out the flavors of the garlic in the oil and just make it taste really good. All right, the next thing that we're gonna add is an onion. So we're gonna do the whole onion. We're gonna saute it in there with the garlic. And I like to kind of peel off that top layer first, if I can get to it. And we're just gonna cut the very top all the way off and then just peel it. And you can use any type of onion you like. I believe this is a sweet onion. I tend to favor towards those sweet onions or the yellow onions. Sometimes I will grab a red onion if I want to go that route. I'm just struggling with this outside layer. If that ever happens, you can just peel the entire outside if you need to. All right, and then we are going to just cut it right down the middle. And then we are going to cut it kind of lines down, keeping that root on. And then you just cut it the other way and it makes it pre-diced for you so that you've got those nice diced pieces. So I'm gonna finish this up, add it to our Instant Pot, and we'll see you back in just a second.
Introducing the Star Communications app. All the tools you need in one convenient location. You can access Watch TV everywhere. Check local channel lineup. Check your star email. View and pay your star bill. Report troubles. Use your star security app. Check your home voicemail. Sign up for Crowd Fiber. Check your Wi-Fi speed. The list keeps going and going. Download for free from the App Store or Google Play.
All right, so we have our onions. They're nicely sauteed at this point. I did go ahead and add just a little bit of chicken broth to the bottom of our saute pan. We are gonna add our chicken next, and that way it'll just get kind of nice and brown and start to give it some color. And if I can grab it here. This is about a pound of chicken. So they are larger chicken breasts, but we're gonna be shredding it up and all of that once it's done. So we're just gonna put that in with the onions and garlic and let it kind of gather those flavors of the garlic and onions, so it'll be really yummy. All right, so the next thing that we're gonna do, I'm actually gonna pour some of this in this bowl. We are just gonna be using some of these white beans. I'm gonna mash. It'll be about 1 can of those white beans. We are gonna mash them up. So you can use whatever you have on hand. You could just use a fork if you want to go that route. And it's okay if they're not perfectly mashed because you're going to have some whole beans in there as well. But this will just give it a little bit of different texture and make it taste a little bit more creamy. And these are great northern beans. So you could really use any white beans. I actually struggled to find some great northern beans while I was in the grocery store. So I almost went for the cannellini beans, which we have used here before. They are a little bit more round. I think they're a little bit softer to me. Their texture is just a little bit softer than those Great Northern. Great Northern reminds me of like white kidney beans, which goes perfectly with a chili. You think of kidney beans for any type of chili. All right, so those are good and mashed. We're just doing 1 can, and we have added a total of 3 cans of these beans. So one of those, you can either, if you want to, you could absolutely use a blender or a food processor to kind of skip this step if you don't want to hand mash them. It's just a little bit easier for us to do here on set today. All right, so that is starting to get, you can see it's kind of boiling over here and really steaming up. We are going to go ahead and flip that. Hopefully it will be nice and colorful and browned on the other side. And since we're gonna be cooking this, it's not like it needs to be cooked through. We are really just helping to coat this, kind of get the outside layer of these chicken breasts. All right, so while that's doing its thing, I'm gonna go ahead and add our spices to this. So we are gonna need 2 teaspoons of cumin. So anytime you are doing a chili, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be adding cumin to your chili. I love cumin. It has just a really good flavor. And it just gives it this kind of what you expect when you eat a chili. It gives you that good aroma. And we're doing 2 teaspoons of this. All right, and then we are also gonna be doing 2 teaspoons of oregano. You could opt for fresh oregano if you wanted to go that route. If you're doing fresh, a lot of times with dried, when we talk about herbs, you want to scale back when you're using dried because the flavors begin to condense down. Think about, and I know I've talked about this before on the show, but think about a raisin versus a grape, right? A grape is really fresh, it's not quite as sweet, but a raisin, all the flavor, once it's been dried, it condenses down and you have a raisin that's really, really sweet. Same concept for any of your herbs. When you dry them, all that flavor kind of intensifies and is condensed. So when you're using fresh, you need to go with more of that herb when if the recipe calls for dried. If you opt to switch from fresh to dried, you need to use a little bit less and start to scale back. All right, so the next thing, we have cayenne pepper. And this will give it a little bit of spice. We're not using a whole lot. We're just doing about a teaspoon here. So you can scale up or down based on your preference of spiciness. I'm gonna try to not make a mess here. And the recipe calls for 1.5 teaspoons. So you opt, we're just gonna stick with 1. All right, so we're gonna let that kind of continue to cook a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and flip them one more time, and then we will see you guys back here in just 1 minute.
Sweetie, will you turn that down, please?
Keep life exciting, even when it's not. Watch TV everywhere from Star Communications.
All right, so we have our spices in there. I did also just add a little bit more. So while we're cooking this through, instead of adding more olive oil, I've just been slowly adding this chicken broth that we have. You're gonna end up doing 2 cans of chicken broth anyways. But this way, it also helps us to do what's called deglazing. So anytime you have little bits of food at the bottom of your pan or your pot, if you add a little bit of water or chicken broth or whatever you're using there, and just kind of scrape at the bottom, that will get any of those toasty bits of food up that is at the bottom, and it actually helps to flavor your food and give it this really tasty flavor that you don't get. Also, it helps to avoid, if you're using an Instant Pot, having burned bits of food that once you start cooking, there is an error message that will pop up on an Instant Pot saying something's burning, and it'll actually shut off. So it avoids having to go through that step. So we're gonna add our beans here. So we're doing those 3 cans and that can of mashed. Get as much of it as we can out here. And then we are also doing 1 can of chopped green chilies. And then just our chicken broth. Very simple. When we're choosing chicken broth, let's opt for the low sodium. And if you had a carton of chicken broth, that would be perfectly fine as well. You can do, whatever you have on hand. But you see how everything's fully covered in our Instant Pot? That's what we want to aim for with this. And we're just going to go ahead and get it started. So for this, we are going to cook it for a little bit less time. Our recipe is for you to actually make it on the stovetop. This is actually, since this is Instant Pot, it's going to cook much faster. So we are going to just do 15 minutes because we do have chicken in there. We want to make sure that's cooked thoroughly. And you also just want to make sure that you've given it enough time to cook. So we just press pressure cook and then went up to 15 minutes. And then you want to make sure that your nozzle up here is on sealing instead of venting. So that way it'll start to properly build the pressure and cook the way we want to. And then we are going to do somewhat of a natural release. And then right before we're ready, we're going to switch it. So you'll push it to venting and it'll go to quick release. So that's good. We're set. We are going to transition to our next recipe. So over here, we've got my favorite chili. I will say it's probably not my husband's because it is a vegetarian chili. It doesn't have any meat in it. But to me, it still has just such good flavor. It's just different than what you would typically get with a chili. So you could even think of this more of like a soup. But when we usually have beans involved, a lot of times we and just the flavors that are here. We think of chili that goes right along with this. So we're gonna start with our garlic. Same thing here. And I'm just chopping it up. If you have a garlic press, you could go that route. I am a gadget girl. I love gadgets, but if I have my knife and cutting board already available to me, and I'm gonna be dirtying that up anyways, it's just as easy for me to sit here and chop my garlic as it is for me to use that garlic press. So we just wanna get it nice and chopped up to help bring the aroma out of the garlic. That should be pretty good. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and get our pot on. And we're just doing it on the saute feature, same concept here. We're getting the pot nice and warm. We're gonna heat up our garlic and heat up our onions. So adding just a little bit of olive oil at the bottom. And this is maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons. So if you're trying to get an idea of how much are you adding, it's around 1 to 2 tablespoons. And you could wait until your pot is nice and hot. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it in there. Typically I wait, but I'm trying to make some room here on my cutting board. And then once I start to hear that sizzling, we'll start to add our onions to it as well. So this one's extremely simple. We don't have a ton of ingredients. I usually buy a butternut squash that's already cut up. They did not have any available in the grocery store for me today. So we are gonna be using a whole butternut squash. If you're not using, if you're doing just a pre-cut butternut squash, which they do sell, kind of already cut up by the grocery store for you, then you're gonna need about 4 cups of butternut squash. So what we are gonna do, now this is very, very hard, we are going to cut off the top, and then we're gonna cut it right down the middle. So you have to be very careful. I usually start halfway, and then I just work my way around. So this is a very sharp knife as well, which makes it a little bit easier to use. So you see I'm watching my hand the entire time as I cut this, and I'm just rocking it going around the outside. And I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but this is the way I have always done it, just being very careful, being very cautious throughout. So just like you have with a pumpkin, you'll have seeds on the inside that you're gonna need to carve those out and discard them. You could also eat these and roast them the same as you would pumpkin seeds. So I'm going to finish chopping this guy up, and then we'll see you guys back in just a second.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping home secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
All right, we've got our onions and they are cooked through with our garlic. I've went ahead and turned our pot off for right now, but it's still a little bit of sizzling going on. I have went ahead and peeled my butternut squash. So I peeled the outside. I went ahead and took that inner part out of the inside, the seeds out of the inside part too. So we are just gonna go ahead and chop this up. Now, it is a lot to try to peel this thing, which is why I did it off camera. So I really encourage you either to put it in the microwave and start to soften the outside. That will definitely help you to cut it more easily, or buy it pre-chopped. When I always do this recipe, I typically go ahead for pre-chopped because it's just a lot easier to work with. So this is a still, even without that outer layer, it's still a tough squash to cut into. So you're gonna have to have a nice sharp knife and put some power behind that elbow. We're just cutting it into chunks. So I would say maybe 2-inch chunks. And we're gonna go ahead and throw these into our pot. And there's been a popular stuff floating around recently about using pumpkin in chili recipes, like a can of pumpkin, which is, we've done a pumpkin chili on here before. If you missed that one, go back and watch it. But with your, any of your chilies, when you add pumpkin to it, it does help to give it a creaminess, a sweetness. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've heard of putting salt on watermelon and eating it that way. The salt actually helps to bring out the sweetness of the watermelon. So it does the opposite of what you would typically think of when we're talking about, why would you add salt to watermelon? Well, it makes it taste a little bit sweeter. I'm not talking a lot of salt, just a little bit. Same concept here. When you add a can of pumpkin to a chili recipe, and this is for something like your traditional chili, it helps to make it creamy and it helps to balance out that chili because you've got those spicy flavors. The hint, it's very small amount of sweetness that you get with with pumpkin. It helps to give it that flavor. So it's not, you don't really taste the pumpkin in it. It just helps to balance. And then you're also adding vegetables. So canned pumpkin is a great healthy vegetable for you to include. So I say all of that because butternut squash is very similar to pumpkin. A lot of people will use them interchangeably. So butternut squash, this is a sweeter, it's sweet and spicy in this recipe. All right, so we've got those all cut up into chunks. Next, we have 2 cans of black beans. Now, I went ahead and rinsed these. When you rinse, you can remove about 30% of the sodium that's in that. So we went ahead and rinsed it really well to help get some of the sodium out, if you can't find the low sodium black beans. And then we are doing 2 cans of just stewed tomatoes, and you're gonna keep those with their juice. So the whole can, don't drain this, you're just gonna dump it all in there. And then we are gonna be adding, our recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of vegetable broth. I'm gonna see where we are with our level in our, actually I'm just gonna go ahead and up it to a cup. Just because since we are using an Instant Pot, you need enough liquid in there to help create the steam. Same concept, I think, as well. Well, not the same concept because you don't have steam with a crock pot, but you still want enough liquid in your crock pot to help really cover the food so that it will all cook thoroughly. So that was perfect. We added a cup of vegetable broth in with that. So I'm just gonna stir this up a little bit. And then last thing is to add our spices. So we have chili powder, which is commonly used with our chilies. We did not use it for our white chicken chili, but you absolutely could. We put cayenne in that one instead, and that still gave it the spice. But if you want a little bit more of that chili flavor, you could absolutely add chili powder to that. So this is 1 whole tablespoon of chili powder. And if you're ever doing like a chili powder packet, or sorry, a chili seasoning packet, a lot of the time it will have a good bit of chili powder in that. So we're also gonna do cumin, and we're just doing 1 teaspoon of cumin. And then we have just a pinch of cayenne pepper. So I'm actually just gonna shake this, a little bit of this on the top. And a trick for you, if you are ever doing something where you're shaking right over the pot, I always just take my finger and hold down the lid. I've had it happen before where that lid was not secured tightly and popped right off, and think about a whole thing of cayenne pepper in whatever you're making. It will definitely change the flavor, could possibly ruin the dish. You would have to do some recovery with that. So we are just gonna stir this up. Now notice I did not add any salt to this. If you want to add salt, you can. I encourage you to wait until it's completely finished cooking and add the salt later. So we're gonna go ahead, put it on sealing, turn this baby on, and we are just gonna do 10 minutes for this one, just because there's nothing raw in here except for that butternut squash, but we wanna make sure it's cooked thoroughly through. So we set it to 10 minutes and it will begin. These are two really, really great recipes that you can try. We will show you when they are all complete what they look like, but I hope that you enjoy these chilies, enjoy this cooler weather, that you can start to kind of have these nice, healthy, heated up foods into your meals. So make sure you get those vegetables added along with it. Enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time. And enjoy these tasty chilies this fall. Add a little bit of cheese or sour cream to your white bean chili. Tastes so yum.